I remember watching him on TV. He scored 3 or 4 tries against the Aussies down at Carisbrook.
Up over halfway, steps out of 2-3.
And it just grew from there. And then I started wanting more. And, you know, I wanted higher honours and wanted to carry on and represent New Zealand.
It was at Wesley College that the 16-year-old Jonah encountered Eric Rush, an established All Black Sevens player.
Went out to take a Sevens training for their school team, and he was a man amongst boys, 6'5", 118 kgs, and a sprinter. And I was quite quick, and I thought, oh, I'll have a crack at this young fella, and took off on the outside, and he was just jogged up behind me, smiling and touch. I was like, geez, this guy's special, you know. So I said to the big fella after the game, we take this team around the world, are you keen to have a go? Oh, yeah. I said, we're off to Singapore next week, you want to come? Sweet. Which was pretty much the extent of his vocabulary back then, you know.
At the start of 1994, Jonah was becoming a star on the Sevens circuit, winning player of the tournament at the National Championships.
This is Jonah Lomu at his best, outstripping the Waikato defence.
Most guys you play against, especially wingers, if you get a hand on them, you got them, you know. But you needed more than a hand to stop Jonah. You needed 2 arms, shoulders, and a couple of other guys' arms and shoulders as well.
And so I said, well, I'll leave it down to if I get selected for the New Zealand Sevens squad, I won't be coming back to school.
1994 would be a whirlwind year for Jonah Lomu. In March, he was selected for the All Black Sevens team. Then came the chance to make the full squad.
It's the highest honour you could get asked.
Jonah Lomu may well have broken another record after the trial. For the longest time to get off the park after a match, he spent more than half an hour obliging the autograph collectors and photographers, getting his mum Heppy and dad Samisi in on the action too.
Speed element of it practically came from my mum's side. She was a sprinter when she was at school.
Lomu's moment!
I always think that, you know, I've always had to have that speed, try and get away from mum when she's chasing me around the place if I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
His actions in the match confirmed his rise to the All Blacks little more than a month past his 19th birthday.
This was the pre-professional era of rugby. It was an amateur game, and so the day after the trial, Jonah went back to his day job, working in the bank.
Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Aged 19 years and 45 days, he made his full debut against the French in Christchurch. The youngest player ever to do so for the All Blacks.
It's a fairy story. Just a year ago, he was a 7th former at Wesley College. A year later, he's winger for his country. Lomu going to have a run. He's a big man. 112 kilograms. You know, before today, he only had 5 games of first-class rugby on the wing.
He was part of a squad that included some of the greatest ever All Blacks, including legendary centre Frank Bunce.
He turns up and he's at the beginning of his career. I was kind of almost at the end. Everyone's heard about all the, you know, the times he can run, you know, 100 metres, and, you know, he can do this in the gym, and then he walks in and you look at him and you think, jeez.
We ended up in Taupo, which they called, we called it the hell camp.
You had to prove yourself at training, obviously. You had to prove that you were up, you know, up for it, that you should be there. Definitely wasn't welcoming.
We were men on a mission, preparing for the 1995 Rugby World Cup.
It was the time when you separated the men from the boys. Laurie sat us down before the camp started, and he said, these 3 days is just basically, we're going to find out who wants to be here and who doesn't.
The buzz in New Zealand when he first came onto the scene, just crazy. It was crazy because there was no one else like him.
People were expecting so much from him.
The Rugby World Cup of 1995 was an historic sporting event. It was being hosted by South Africa, a nation that had come out of the apartheid regime. just 1 year before.
It is my privilege to declare this the 1995 Rugby World Cup tournament open.
The eyes of the world would be on the tournament and the All Blacks, who were among the favourites to win.
You don't even think about not winning it. You know, you go there to do the very best you can, and the goal is there, and it's the final, in winning the final.
We had won the inaugural World Cup held in New Zealand in 1987, but suffered the bitter disappointment of losing to Australia in the semi-final in 1991.
You know, All Blacks, there is no plan B in New Zealand rugby. It's win or nothing, you know, which is how it should be.
It was the moment of truth, knowing that it was my opportunity to stake my claim as an All Black player. Standing there and hurling up into a bucket, you know, with 5 minutes to go before you run on. You know, butterflies floating around everywhere. And then once that whistle went, you know, it all disappeared.
It was the first time that you thought, okay, we've got something really, really special on our hands here. They brought something totally different that the game had never seen previously.
Number 11, Jonah Lomu. Really, John, he's a monster.
Then that next game was against the Welsh. And this is a perfect example of the guy Jonah was. I'd never played a test match for the All Blacks. Jonah started. He made a couple of awesome runs, and then he went down hurt. And I'm on the sideline, so I'm up and down the sideline warming up for my first test, maybe. And I'm sure the big fella could have carried on. When he saw me warming up for my first game, he puts his head down and limps off the paddock. So I know he was all right, because at training the next day he was fine, mate. So that's the kind of fella Jonah was.
After winning all 3 of their pool games, New Zealand faced Scotland in the quarter-finals.
We wanted to make the semis. We knew we had a big build-up. We were either going, we had to get through Scotland. It was our dress rehearsal, and basically go as hard as we can.
Jonah Lomu with another chance here. Lomu goes round Craig Joyner, and the big man has scored.
Having defeated Scotland, we would face England in the semi-finals.
It was a huge build-up, and so everyone was kind of on edge.
It was pretty brutal in the week leading up to that game. You know, there were stitches every day of training.
Trainings were like men possessed. I hadn't seen that sort of focus or mental focus towards one team by an All Black side before.